Good afternoon. It's Wednesday and it's 4 o'clock, so of course it is time for another episode of MIQTV. I'm very glad to see some people starting to join. That's wonderful. I'm going to invite my guest now, if I can type his name correctly. I'm going to invite my guest for this afternoon, who is Will Hotham, who left that with a very smooth practice, so I'm hoping he will join us presently. And here he is. That was one of the smoothest yet, sir. Thank you very much. It's worked perfectly again. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I haven't even introduced you properly yet, so we're so fast. Hi, how are you?
Very well, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. So brilliant that you can join us this afternoon. I was just about to say, Will left us in 2018, having done A-levels in biology, chemistry and PE. And I believe you did some French for a year as well as at AS. And went on to study at Newcastle. He's currently a senior currently a senior scientist in Nottingham. So I'm going to get us, if you will, to tell us the story from leaving Queggs, having done your A-levels, you're off to Newcastle. What happened next?
Yeah, so fortunately I got my grades to go up to Newcastle and study biomedicine. So I was really enjoying that. Then after my first year, I actually had to have hip surgery. So I had surgery in my summer holiday, my first year and my second year, and got to know the surgeon and went on placement with him. So I actually got to go and watch an orthopaedic surgeon live and see what happened. And that's what drove me to thinking I wanted to learn about arthritis and stem cells, given it was sort of quite pertinent to myself.
Yeah. And were you told that you were at risk from arthritis? From having the issues with your hips? Wow.
Yeah. So we caught it early enough, but we still wanted to. I'm still at risk of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that drove me to do a master's again at Newcastle. Sort of loved the city, loved the nightlife there, and found a really good master's course in regenerative medicine.
Yeah.
So I did my PhD there. I did my master's course up there. Really got on with my lab, and we decided actually to apply for PhD funding. That didn't happen, and we weren't successful in our grant application. But I then applied through a website called findaphd.com.
Yeah.
And saw Cambridge University arthritis, and it was actually in horses. So I sent an email to the supervisor, said whose lab I was with, and it was sort of quite fortunate. I wrote a nice application that I then did my PhD down in Cambridge for 3.5 years.
Fantastic. Were you based in a particular college at Cambridge?
Yeah, so I was at St Cat's in Cambridge, but my research is all down at Addenbrooke's at the hospital there.
Of course. And for those who are perhaps not sure, we have had someone else a few weeks ago talking about a PhD, but just in case people weren't watching, could you just explain sort of the difference? You either a degree at university, then a master's, and then a PhD. What are the differences, please, for those who aren't sure?
So your PhD is much more independent. So your undergraduate, your what do we call it? Your
first degree, your bachelor's, isn't it?
Yeah, my BSc, the dissertation, it's called. That is much more. You're supported a lot throughout that, and then we consider it a training course. As you progress, you get a lot more independent. So as you then go into your masters, you're doing studies all on your own. For me, I was able to then work out of hours. As the nature of science is, quite often an experiment doesn't work in business hours. Quite 12-hour time point, so you'd have to go home, have dinner, and then come back in.
Uh-huh.
Your PhD is entirely led by you. So for me, the start of it was go away and read a lot about the subject, learn a lot more about it, and then where did I want to go with it? So I was funded by a European grant, and the task was to track stem cells and their secreted vesicles in a model of arthritis.
Wow.
And very broad topic, I then went on and I did 4 research chapters on broadly that. So my first chapter was how I actually characterize stem cells. I then looked at their secretions and how they'd affect other cell types. My third chapter was actually the one which did the job of the project, which was tracking.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also took on another project looking at bone fracture repair, which is something completely new to me, but something I wanted to give it a go. But being back to the question, it is you develop as a scientist to be an independent thinker, plan your own research, budget for your own research, and then reach the deadlines and don't overrun.
And were you in a team for this, or was it completely down to you?
So for the work, the chapter that we did with the grant company, we were linked with 5 other institutions.
Oh, wow.
So Galway, but then we were also linked with Barcelona in Germany, and another institute in Italy. So we were spread quite a lot. So it was interesting trying to collaborate all those scientists. So some produced the label. Our task was to put the label inside the cells and track them. So the book finished with us. So we had to make sure that all the other teams delivered on time, because it was otherwise we'd be in trouble.
Fantastic. And for those who perhaps aren't sure, I don't know how easy it is to give a quick layman's description of what stem cells are and what they do.
Yeah.
Would that be all right, please?
Yeah. So building on sort of what we all learned at school in biology, of sort of the sperm meets the egg, and then that forms one cell, which can then form 2 cells, and each time it splits in half and forms double the cells, and all expand exponentially. So those very first few cells are what we call totipotent, and what that means is actually they can form any cell type in the body. So if I grew it in a little petri dish, I could turn that into a brain cell, or I could form your big toe, in theory.
Yeah.
And then as those cells develop more, one might say, okay, I'm actually going to become a limb cell, but it doesn't know if it's going to become an arm or a leg. So there are different categories of stem cells, but the strict definition is that they can form any cell type in the body. So I could be a brain cell, I could be a bone cell, but also they're able to cell from you. So they're known as sort of the building blocks within the body, but also they're a big buzzword at the moment, because we want to know, sort of, can we capitalise on these? We have stem cells in our body up until we die. Can we isolate these, expand them, and use them for regenerative medicine, so to repair? In my case with arthritis is the loss of cartilage. So were we able to actually regrow the cartilage?
Wow. So that's, and as you say, that's quite cutting edge. And
yeah.
And so you've done your PhD at Cambridge. So you're now Dr. Hotham then.
Yeah.
Congratulations, that's fantastic. So Dr. Hotham, should have introduced you properly then. So now you're a PhD. And then what happened next? So
yes, the next chapter was quite an interesting one. So I moved up to Nottingham University, and we were working with stem cells to deal with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which is a real mouthful, but it's actually the disease that people have heard about in the news with the footballers collapsing on the football pit.
Oh, really? Right.
It's that disorder. It affects athletes, and predominantly young athletes, where the heart will basically beat and then hit a pivotal point and will stop. It can't go any harder.
Wow.
Now, what we were actually doing is we were using a special subset of stem cells called induced pluripotent. So these were taken from a skin sample. We took someone's skin cells and we turned them back into a stem cell. So we almost undid development back into a stem cell, and then we turned these into beating heart cells, which was fascinating and amazing to do, to see cells in tissue culture plastic just beating away. But actually, I learned a lot about myself in the project. The workload was different, and I found that I was working very odd hours, not sort of the hours that I was expecting to, lots of weekends spent in the lab, which, as you want to progress your career, that's something that you, like we all accept, you have to do at points. But differences in work-life balances you do have to find, and after 8-9 months I found that I was just a complete burnout.
Really?
So
wow.
maybe this academia isn't what I want to do. So then I applied to a role in industry, still in Nottingham, sorry, and thought, this looks great. I just sent an application to see what happens, see what it's like, and then I got invited to a preliminary interview with the managing director. And that taught me a lot about how these companies work. It's not necessarily how much you know, it's the person that you are you talkable, will you get on well with the team? And so you have to pass this first stage of the interview until you actually get, that's your first foot in the door really, is to will you fit well with the team. And then I got the interview of what my qualifications were, and on from there.
So what does a senior scientist do then on a day-to-day basis?
It varies.
That's the correct title, isn't it? Yeah, you're called a senior scientist. Yeah.
So at our company, it changes a lot. So we look at samples, be it from a clinical trial looking at cancer. At the moment today, I've been looking at dorsal root ganglion cells. So they're in the spinal cord. And we've been trying to image them to see if they're more sensitive to pain after certain diseases or not. And then tomorrow, I'm working for a company where we're looking at the nerves developing in the skin. So every day is different.
And you said you're a company, so this is people who've got particular projects or particular bits of research, and they come to you for your specialism. So tell us about this. Can you find out about that? Or
so they will say what their aim is, and we will then work on how to take them from this idea that someone's had, and have preliminary data to back up spending the money. They will then go to us and we will say, this is how to do it. Quite commonly we'll take it, we have to work to good laboratory practice, which enables them to take the study then, if it's revolving around clinical trials, we have a different subset that we work in. So we then help mitigate them moving from sometimes the bench to the bedside of, this is our cell data, maybe, that they've got. Now they're actually wanting to get patient data, analyse it. We're obviously unbiased. And we go from there. So every day is completely different, the different studies that we work on. So there's a lot of variety.
And again, that does sound particularly interesting. Are you as part of a team, or do you manage a team? Where are you in the kind of setup as a senior scientist?
So I mean, I always think that as a team leader, you should always be able to muck in at the coalface. So I'm quite frequently in the lab doing the experiments. I will normally do sort of the first and the last experiments, getting everything set up and ready. With trainee scientists that have come either after their undergraduate degree or a master's degree. We then have research scientists that might have done, instead of a PhD, gone into research. So I'll help them get more experience and learn how to do the experiments and studies. I'll be in charge as well of making sure we're there on timelines. We're coming in under budget. We're delivering it. So sometimes that means an odd late night of we've got to get it done by tomorrow. But so it's a real mixture. But I think I've read in a few sort of like the leadership books, and you should be, if you're going to lead a group, you need to know what every person. I started this position in January, and for my first month, I was doing every single step of every study just to learn how it is, where everything is in the timelines to expect when I then set people more time.
And you joined in January just gone, or January a year ago?
January 2023, so still quite...
Right, it's a very new role then. Wow. Yeah. I must just say, for anybody watching who thinks I got my sums wrong, because I described you as leaving in 2018, which is clearly not correct when you've done all this time. You left in 2014, didn't you? So apologies for that. I said it wrong at the beginning. So that's why you have 8 years of experience of university and postgraduate and so on, because you couldn't have squeezed that in since 2018. So apologies for that correction there.
3 years of an undergrad, 1 year masters, and 3 and a bit years of a PhD.
And then a year at Nottingham. And now you've started this new role, and you're obviously enjoying it, and that's going really well. That's fantastic. I wish you the best for that. So we've looked at how we've got to here. If you don't mind us looking back a little bit, looking back over that career and back into school days, and we'll explore school days a bit more in a minute. What bits stand out as you're most proud of? What bits are the highlights in that journey so far?
I mean, getting my PhD is probably my biggest achievement I'm very proud of, and it was a challenging time to do a PhD because we had COVID midway through, which was challenging. So we were based in the hospital, as well. So we had to work very carefully around government guidelines and hospital NHS guidelines. So that took I had to plan my experiments to within 5 minutes when the studies took 12 hours, 24 hours. So that was a real challenge, and an education for me was learning. I mean, I was good at time management. That took it to the next level.
Yeah.
As well as I'd have to be careful that I was living with my partner who has asthma, very determined in not bringing COVID back home to her. It was
absolutely. So,
I think sort of as well. I mean, at school, I was not the brightest in the year by a long way. I mean, I think Quegs, it does teach you a lot of graft, grit, and determination. So, for me, being able to, I've got a PhD from Cambridge.
Yeah.
Grinding it out. I mean, I'm very grateful to a lot of people, a lot of school teachers that have sort of helped me along the way with learning. I mean, I am dyslexic as well, which makes it, which has made some things challenging. A lot of writing issues that I've had has led to some interesting emails where one moment where I got faces and feces wrong in an email.
Yeah.
Of course, an interesting response. But
oh dear. But yeah, so that's a challenge you've overcome. And what stands out there is that it was your words. You said you weren't the brightest in the year, but that isn't what it's about, is it? It's about the journey that you set off on and taking the opportunities as you clearly have. And when you're thinking back to your time at school, if you're in the sixth form, let's say, can you remember where you imagined you might end up at this sort of stage if you're thinking forward? Would it have been where you are now, or would it have been something quite different?
It'd have been completely the opposite. I remember saying in my careers meeting, the last thing I want to do is be sat in a lab pipetting all the time.
So there you go.
I think I remember at 18 thinking I'd got everything in order and I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and I could see my life all planned out ahead of me. I never thought I'd do a master's. I never thought I didn't know what a PhD was. I didn't know that was a thing. So whatever you think you know when you're 18, you might know it. I know a lot of people who've gone on to say do medicine. They've loved it, but also I know a lot of people that went on to do medicine and dropped out within a year.
Interesting.
Just because you think you know what you're doing, obviously I'm not saying turn around and do a U-turn and don't do that, but there's no point in just giving something a go. See what's out there, what you enjoy doing.
And as you say, what you think at one point, you become more knowledgeable, you have more experience, there's more opportunities open up, as have happened for you, and you think, oh, I could do that, or that might be right for me, and why not? And I think that's a really important message, a really important thing to think, that whatever you think sitting at school or looking forward, it may well look like that, but it may well not. And I think that's a really important lesson to remember, especially for younger boys and girls watching. What other memories have you got? When you think back to your time at Quegs, is there anything that jumps out particularly as good times, bad times, happy times, funny times? What sort of things spring to mind quickest when you remember school?
I mean, I played a lot of rugby at school, so I've got a lot of fun memories. It was really good meeting up with a few guys that I used to play rugby with at a wedding in May last year. It wouldn't have been May last year, but that was absolutely fantastic to go and meet. It's one of those where you meet up with each other and you crack on like you've not been apart, really. It's so a lot of fun memories with all the sport. I was always doing a sport or activity at Quegs.
You were quite outdoors. In my memory is you were quite into the outdoors and outdoor pursuits. Yeah. Is that right? Have I got the right memory there? I'm not getting you mixed up.
I didn't do outdoor pursuits. It was mainly sort of all the cricket, golf.
Yeah.
So that was always good fun. But then, I mean, even just the general chat in the classroom, in the sixth form sense, that was always keep you on your toes. Boys being boys, lads being lads, it'll always they'll catch you out for absolutely anything.
Yeah, brilliant. And you mentioned there going to a wedding. You met up with small friends. Are you still in touch with quite a few of your school friends?
Oh yeah. So I mean, it's Harry Newcomb's stag do on Saturday. So
is it coming up? Excellent.
That's on Saturday, so I can't tell you too much about that. But
No, am I right in thinking you're his best man? Is that
yeah,
right?
I
Yeah.
don't find out
Well,
what's going on.
we all wish him all the best as well, and I hope that all goes well. I've been a best man before. It's quite a bit of pressure, but quite a nice honour to have that as well. So I hope that goes well. And you've had
Yeah,
to organise a stag do as well. So I hope you all come away safely. Let's hope maybe that's the most we can hope for. But have a good time and
yeah. Well,
celebrate.
he's one up on me because he's my best man for my wedding. So he says whatever I he gets.
That's right. Okay, that's a clever move. So you've both got that deal to make. And when are you getting married? Is that coming up soon?
No, I'm September next year.
Oh,
So
okay.
got a good bit of time, but turns out I thought I was good at organising. Wedding organising is something else.
Yeah, I remember those days. It's a few years now, but Mrs. Fitz did it. But yeah, good
Yeah.
memories. And well, again, we wish you all the very best for that when the time comes, and let us know how it goes. And I'm sure we'll see things online and be able to support and give you well wishes there. So that's looking a bit to the future. What you've obviously just started in this role. So what looking towards the future? Where do you see that going? Are there particular areas of interest? Are you going to see how it goes? What's the what,
Yeah.
obviously we talked about you can't tell the future because it'll turn out different, but what at the moment looks like the next things for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. One bit of advice I got told about being in the lab and being a researcher is the best researchers end up not being in the lab and being stuck behind a desk,
Mm.
which is quite an interesting one because I do love the days running the lab, and I find days when I'm stuck at the computer analysing things or sending clients emails, they're not necessarily the most fun days. So I aim to still be in the lab. Obviously, I hope to progress further into the management roles and lead more projects. The company is quite young and new, so that's exciting because we're developing at a real rate. So in November, December, when I had my interview, we're on an expansion process.
Right.
So we're growing, we sort of almost doubled in size, and then hopefully we'll do the same again in a few years. So hopefully I'll work my way up and then hopefully be I don't know if my boss is watching, but go for more management roles as things progress. Definitely at the moment I want to stay in science, but it's very interesting looking at from doing biomedicine, the range of my cohort, the range of careers is so broad. We have people who now work in tax advisory, we've got people who work in law. It's a real spectrum, and these transferable skills are things that you don't think when you're doing it. You don't think, oh well, that's going to suit me well in the future. You never know until you need it. You think, oh yeah, I know that. Oh yeah, I've picked up on that before. So it's one of those where maybe if I don't stay in science, I might go down a different route in the future. I've learned very quickly that what you think you're going to do, you probably won't end up doing it in 10 years,
But
20.
yeah, but the skills you have, particularly as you've led teams and you talked about time management before, that they're actually applicable in new disciplines. It's not so much about, as you say, it's not what you know,
No.
as much as how you do it and how you manage yourself and how you relate to people. And you've already said that, and I think that's again a really interesting point, because we can get set in school about worrying about our grades and worrying about how much we know, and that is important, obviously, to succeed in a field, but perhaps more general, I think that, what we call transferable skills or soft skills. And again, would you agree with that? Is that
Definitely.
need to be said for?
So since actually getting my A levels, I've done courses that are graded, but actually I didn't have any requisites really or any requirements of what grade I need. So for my masters, I'd spoken to one of the course leaders who then encouraged me to apply and said that I want you to do a project in my lab. I then was speaking to my a PhD supervisor, so I applied. But after going through all of the sort of speaking to my supervisor, I then had a Skype call that day. These seem to be quite common now. You've got to be on the ball. But a lot of it is, are your skills transferable? One bit of advice I still carry from school is keep your CV up to date. Even if it's not polished, you learn a new skill, write it down on your CV at the bottom. Because for any of my interviews that I've had that day or the next day, being able to go and just skim through, oh yeah, I know that, I know this skill, they are invaluable really, because otherwise you'd spend hours just trying to find what you did previously.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely super piece of advice, because that's something I'm not along. Oh yeah, because you want to apply for a job, and you bring your CV up to date, and as you say, it can take a long time. Whereas if you're doing it contemporaneously, ongoing as it happens, it's dead easy, and it's impressive because you clearly, you just did that last week, last month, whatever. That's going to make that impression. No, I think that's a really, really good bit of advice. So you're
TV can be done then. I know you probably don't, but you could do that in an evening if you needed to polish it. Obviously, the more and the better you have. But if someone says, "Oh, that's great, can you send me your CV?" You don't want to leave them waiting a week. You want it to be on their desk by close of play. So,
yeah.
After my PhD, for my PhD, it was very odd. I remember having to ring Cambridge. I had a notification on my system saying something has changed to your application, but it wouldn't let me see, so I had to ring them, and the person on the phone, she was really nice and friendly, and she said, "Well, I'm not allowed to tell you what you've read." Like, "Oh, come on, that's a bit dangling the carrot." She said, "Well, if I was you, I wouldn't be worried." Okay, so that maybe means I don't need a distinction in my master's course. And in the end, it actually said my only requirement was to not be a student at Newcastle University come the 1st of October.
Right.
I thought, I can do that.
I can do that. I can't be enrolled in 2 places. I can manage that. Yeah.
And then after that, it was all what sort of person are you? So my Nottingham job application, what came out of that was my grit and determination, was some of the assets I got told. And then for this job, again, it was grit, determination, enthusiasm. I would say to people, if you're preparing for an interview, every interview I've had, I've been asked a similar theme of what are your 3 weaknesses? And if you say I'm a perfectionist, I don't think they'll take you on.
That's really interesting. Talking about qualities and the things that get people jobs, you talked about the company being expanding, and you're in a period of expansion. Are you hiring then? Are you involved in looking for people? What do you look for in a good candidate? You've given loads of advice already, thank you, but what other advice would you share?
Just because a company is not advertising on Indeed.com or something doesn't mean that the door is shut. Quite often, if you send a nice email, not necessarily a covering letter, always attach your CV. If you send a nice email expressing your interest and personalise it to the company, they're never some companies might delete it straight away, but companies are looking for the right people. Your salary for some companies could just be a rounding error. There are some big companies out there, so if they want the right person, now when I'm working for clients, and I realise that actually, if I did 4 studies, that's my salary paid for, and I could do that in February. The rest of the year's work is just funding the company.
Yeah.
So just because a company isn't advertising, doesn't mean always be polite and friendly with the receptionist or the head of the first port of call. There are stories you hear where a CEO or something will always look at the receptionist and they'll give a thumbs up or a thumbs down about.
What do we think of this one? Yeah.
But I mean, that's the thing. A lot of it is people skills. Can you talk to people? In my field, you spend a lot of time in the lab talking to each other. Today, when we've had dull moments, we have sort of incubation periods of 5 minutes to half an hour to an hour. I think our topic today was, if you could have any 3-course meal, what would you have? It's an interesting one, but being able to get on with a team, otherwise being in the lab can be a long, lonely place.
Sure. And you're looking out for each other and got to, watching out for making sure it all works. And that is a really important part of being a team and relating to it.
Is it safe? Do things, we work with some really horrible chemicals, some very strong acids. Are people safe? Are people okay? Last night I overran by 15 minutes and I was lone working. I had 2 people that I had to text or would text me. I said, I'll only be 15 minutes. If I had messaged them half an hour, I'd have had a text saying, is everything okay?
Yeah.
You all look after each other, so you want to hire someone that you know you'll get on with, that will have you back. Yeah,
and it's important that exactly. So more specific advice. because we've had amazing amounts of brilliant advice today. Thank you. Have you got anything about if I'm sitting in the audience today, I'm a a member of the school or a member of the girls' school or a parent of a student. What and I'm really liking the sound of this. This sounds like biomedicine, working in a lab, cutting edge research. I'm thinking this. What particular advice might you have for them at that point, if they wanted to follow steps, it were?
A very general point would be do what makes you happy. Don't do what your parents want you to do. Don't do what your teachers want you to do. Like, obviously, take their advice. They're older and wiser than you, maybe, but at the end of the day, if they're pushing you to do, let's say French, and you think absolutely not, I can't imagine anything worse, you need to have a conversation about that. The perks for if someone is wanting to go down the science route, I know when I applied, I had offers from Sheffield and Newcastle, which were my two favourites. They were very good because they were quite broad courses to start with in the first year. So I did bits of biochemistry, bits of physiology, bits of biophysics. And then you're able to narrow it down. And again, I chose subjects that, I was quite good at, but also ones that I enjoyed. That came in when I was choosing my A-levels, my A2s. So I did biology, chemistry, French, and PE. And a lot of people have said, why on earth didn't you do French? My mum was a French teacher at the girls' high school.
Of course she was, yeah.
But I had reached that point with with French that I thought I'd enjoyed it enough, but I really enjoyed the PE aspects of it. At the open days, I went and asked the course leaders. I said, look, I'm going to do biology and chemistry, but which one would you prefer? And they didn't mind, so I thought, well, I'm going to choose the one that I enjoy the most.
Yeah, get one you're going to get a good grade in, and enjoy the
study.
study.
And at the end, so I was, after my AS levels, I think my biology was an A, my chemistry I think was a C or a D, French was an A, and PE was an A. So I worked really hard with Nick Lambert. I think he was sick of the sight of me by the end of it, spending time in the chemistry labs, revising. Same with Jeff Tingle in biology. My biology slipped. My requirement was a AAB, and in the end, my biology slipped to a B. But I brought my chemistry up from either a C or a D up to a B, and it was the PE that got me the A. Now, do I think I'd have got an A at A-level French? Well, I remember seeing it a while ago. French and chemistry are very, very hard. A-level to get A's in. So I think getting the PE A-level probably got me on that career path. Now, I might still be in the same place I am if I hadn't got into Newcastle. I think my insurance offer was from Liverpool, which again is a great city, is a great nightlife there, same as Newcastle. So it was one of those where I did the courses that I enjoyed. It was a nice treat being able to be outside for part of my coursework playing rugby. I remember a lot of us going and playing netball for some of the girls that were doing A-level. It was a shared joint course. Yeah. So going and watching us all learn to play netball was quite funny to watch.
You've obviously got fond memories, and you mentioned a couple of teachers there. Obviously, you remember us helping you out a lot and supporting you in things you found difficult. Any other memories from school? Any other particular teachers or students that stand out that I'm going to put a shout out to? I never taught you, actually, did I? I taught classes in your year, but I missed you. Did Mrs. Fitzhamers teach you at any point?
No, I don't think so. I had Colin Wimborne for my English and Mr. O'Connor.
Yeah. He's not here, but Dr. Wimborne's still here.
Oh, he was my Year 7 form tutor as well. Yes, that was great. And I've not seen her name crop up on the bottom here, but Kath Palin, I remember her being able to silence a room full of boys with just that look.
She's still got that, yeah. She's in the office next door now. So she'll be pleased to get a shout out.
Her and Jim. I saw Jim quite a while ago when I was doing my PhD. Didn't mean to get in touch with him, but again, all the sort of the rugby staff, that was always good. I mean, there's no one really that I don't have a fond memory of. There are teachers that you don't get on with as well, which is always going to happen.
Of course.
look back and you think, you know what, they probably deserved a medal putting up with me for.
Oh, not true, I'm sure. I mean, nice to remember the rugby staff. Trevor, who you'll remember, retired
Yeah.
at Christmas. He just finished. He's just finished after 4 years at Christmas. So I'm sure he'd remember you with fondness as well.
And Wolfie.
Yeah, he's head of sport now.
Is he? Yeah.
Yeah.
He was first rugby coach and taught me A level PE.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And
no,
Owen Liz could have taught you as well. He
taught us the psychology of sport.
Yeah, fantastic.
It's all fun memories that you almost half forget about. I mean, Facebook memories are brilliant. Well, in some ways not, because you think, oh God, why
did I really look like that? We were really up to that back then, yeah. And so, as always, and I say this every week, more than half an hour has flown, and I've absolutely loved talking to you. But I can't keep you all night. You'll have important experiments, I'm sure, to go and tend to do and check on. Is there anything else? I mean, one thing I've asked lots of people: if you could go back in time or tap young Will on the shoulder, what is there a piece of advice you would give him? Anything you would say to your younger self with the knowledge you've gained in the whatever it is 9 years now since you left school?
I'd like to reinforce to myself that the grit is worth it. The grind, those evenings where you've spent. I remember looking over all my maths work. I had Mr. Greaves for my GCSE maths, and I was quite often copying off Harry Newcomb. Great in the class. You get home and you suddenly think, oh, how do I do this? Same with the chemistry, going from the C to the D and grinding away constantly, trying to get it into my head. And why on earth can't I do it? Quegs is I'm not going to say a tough environment, but you are with a lot of very bright lads. And you've got to think that if you were in any other school, you'd be the top 1% there, you'd be their absolute star. And being in that competitive environment, not competitive isn't the right word, but being in that such an excelling environment is good for you. But remind yourself that the graft is worth it, and companies, they are after grafters. If everything comes easy to you, when you hit that brick wall later in life, you don't know how to deal with it. Quegs will teach you how to work with it, even who to speak to, even if it's not your teacher that you go and ask, even if it's someone in the LRC or someone in the sixth form centre about how did you work that out.
People are there to support. I think that's actually a lovely place to finish. I think that for me is a really nice summation of the school, but also your experience of the school of you value what you got from it, but what you've got since as well. I mean, we say made in Quegs, and I think I think you've said that as well. We're all made in Quegs in our own way, but that's one of the things we're using in marketing, and we want to to push that, because being made in Quegs is a good thing. Whether that's I'm a teacher who's made in Quegs, you're a student who's and now a senior scientist who's made in Quegs. So that does feel like a lovely place to finish. I've been asked to ask you if you wouldn't mind being contacted to be a mentor for our Year 12s, for anyone who's now inspired, having listened to your career story and thinks that's something I want to do and find out more about being a scientist. Because I think that's again, you talked about the opportunities, the growth, it's cutting edge. There's still a lot we don't know. I think is that fair to say?
100%.
Yeah.
I encourage anyone who wants to reach out just for a chat, a tip, be that if you're at university or doing A levels, your GCSEs, whatever stage you're at. Asking the question is never going to do any harm. I say to a lot of my students that we had when I was at Nottingham Uni, I'm not going to be cross if you ask me a stupid question. We'll probably have a laugh about it later. But if you don't ask me a question because you think it's stupid and you end up breaking a £1 million machine, you end up losing invaluable patient samples. That's when I might be a bit crosser. Always ask the question. Yeah, someone might giggle at you for a bit, but if you're asking it, there's probably about half a dozen other people thinking it. But
there are no questions.
Always encourage people just to reach out, and I'd be happy to be involved.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, for sharing your wisdom and sharing your experiences. It's been really instructive, really enjoyable. The time's absolutely flown. And anytime you're back in the area, when you're back in Wakefield, or you want to come and visit us at school, you'd be more than welcome. Come for lunch, come and catch up. It'd be great to see you. And we will take you up on your offer of support. But thank you ever so much.
Cake chocolate sauce.
Did they? Sorry, what?
Is it still doing chocolate cake, chocolate sauce for school puddings?
Oh, the food's much better than it used to be, but occasionally we have chocolate cake and chocolate sauce. Is that another fond memory of school?
Oh yeah, with the skin on top.
With the skin on top, yeah. I remember that as well. Thank you so much. It's been brilliant to talk to you. Look after yourself. Good luck with everything, and good luck with being a best man. Good luck with getting married and all that leads to thereafter, and keep in touch. But Will Hotham, MIQTV. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye bye.